Dr. Sharma, good afternoon and welcome again to another session of mental health in the middle of COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Doc, welcome and it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Mark, and good to be back with your audience. And wish everybody good, safe health and well-being. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you. We are grateful to have you. And Doc, right now we are today is April the 17th, 2020. And as of right now, as we're dealing with the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, we have approximately 2.1 million people that have died worldwide. In the United States, we have over 670,000 confirmed cases and over 35,000 people dead. The question I would like you to address, the issue I would like you to address today is overcoming fear in the middle of a pandemic. It's fair to say that when people are facing a dangerous situation, they have some degree of fear, and this fear can trigger them down an avenue where they have anxiety, and things can become very complicated where people may feel some degree of hopelessness that we are seeing right now. As a mental health expert, what would be your assessment and recommendation when dealing with someone who might be overcome by fear?
Yes. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of anxiety going on. It's a change of life. People are now forced into an unnatural situation of being locked at home. Children are away from school. So we've lost touch with our usual way of living. And people are social people, they tend to like to be together, tend to like to be around each other. There's no opportunities now to do much hugging and shaking hands, so we're losing that physical connection. Just a little correction: we haven't had 2 million deaths. We've had 2 million infected cases. So the deaths worldwide from COVID is about 140 something thousand. At the current time, with America having a very high number, as you said. Um, so one of the things I would start to reflect on as we go through this pretty critical time in our lives, and we probably never experienced this before, we we need to reflect on difficult periods. Whilst we never may have experienced a pandemic situation where we've been locked away in our homes, or restricted to some extent, or not being able to go to work. With that would arise worries about economy and finances. We still have had difficult times. America has survived some very bad, horrific times. The world has survived horrific times. So my key message today, Mark, is to say that we will survive. We have gone through really bad times as a human race, and we have survived. And I wanted to touch on some of those times where mankind was faced with severe crises, because sometimes we get lost in ourselves. We feel like, wow, this is so dismal. We're now thinking all those horrible movies that we see where the world is ending and there is no escape and we're all going down. But my take on this is it's a bad virus. It's very damaging. And we've got to be patient and know that we will come through. The good news is that we're hearing that vaccines are on the way. The likelihood of a good vaccine being there shortly is high. So there is hope in that regard. Without making too many promises, we're seeing some good results with medications that are now being tried. So man has tremendous ability to counter the negative forces that are out there that have happened and that will happen. And that's my thought. That's my way of looking at it. We can go into some of the more selective situations, like what can we do with persons. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that yes, there have been really bad times over the history of mankind on Earth, and we have survived. But if we go back, way back into just 7 years AD, where they probably recorded the first um, severe pandemic, where 5 million people were killed, died in the Antonine plague. That was way back in time, and after that you had the plague of Justinian, which was 50 million deaths, and then the great plague, the one that everybody knows about, the Black Death, you know, it was in 1347, and that lasted about 4 years. And how many people died with that? 200 million people, And we had smallpox. We forget smallpox, and that smallpox is almost eradicated, it's completely eradicated through vaccinations with 56 million people dying. So that was a huge amount. Then the other plague that was in the 17th century, the Great Plague of 3 million deaths. We had other great disasters like yellow fever, Mark, would you believe yellow fever killed 150,000 people? And then you had the Spanish flu. You remember the Spanish flu? That was pretty severe. I'm looking at some figures here that I pulled up from the net. And that was 50 million people with the Spanish flu, and that was 1918. The other big one was yellow fever, as I mentioned, about 150,000. And not too long ago, we had the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and that was very scary. You remember that time where they were like you couldn't touch your friend, and you couldn't. People were talking about don't drink from the same glasses, and there was all kind of behaviors that were becoming. People were ostracized if you suspected them to be not having straight sex, and they were like almost brutalized for their sexual behaviors, because people blamed them, and there were so many misconceptions, and that HIV did too bad. It killed 25 million people. You know, we had 1 million people dying from the Asian flu in 1957, and then we had the swine flu in 2009 with 200,000 deaths, and then the horrible Ebola virus, which killed 11,000 people. And then SARS, don't forget SARS, which is more recent, with about 700,000 deaths. So we are at about 140 something thousand deaths, and that is sad to know that we still are not able to respond fast enough, to limit those deaths. But we have to also congratulate the persons in authority that they have taken wise decisions. The masks are very protective, and also staying indoor and being responsible. So social responsibility is critical. Persons, these are lessons we are learning, that we gotta be responsible in terms of how we behave with others. And I think it's a wake up call for people that bad habits, bad hygiene habits should stop. If you're not well and there's a cough, stay home, and don't spread it. Protect our elderly people because they are the vulnerable ones, and we are losing them, and they're the majority of the people who are dying. So, long and short of this, we have been through crises. This one is another crisis. It too shall pass. And let us move forward from here with understanding, with common sense. Know that there's going to be a time when the doors are going to open back up. But out of this calamity, let us become people with more gentleness to each other, with kindness, with support. We're seeing that this virus is not selecting out countries. It's taking everybody down across the borders. So we're all one people on this earth. And these restrictions and borders and so many severe, it's not stopping the virus. We can stop migrants and persons who are trying to come and make a better life and so on. But at the same time, you can't stop a virus. So, how powerful are we as people? We've got to learn the lesson that being together as a world is the way to go forward. be a one world, and let us be responsible about the future. We're getting a warning here that this thing is coming from animals or even from experiments or whatever it happened. Let us learn from these things to not let it be repeated. We're seeing man-made disasters occurring with climate change, and we're not recognizing those things. So that's a broad look at how we should address our fear. We've gone through this, we've gone through worse. Our foreparents survived, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We are going to survive, and we will make a better world. And that's the message I want to see happen. But I also want, Mark, for us to think about on an individual basis how we can overcome the fear of this situation. And that's I'm seeing patients with excessive anxiety, extreme anxiety. They're so fearful, it's almost like you have to put them in a complete body suit, because they believe that the virus is going to fall on their head from the air. Well, yes, it's aerosol, it's in the air, but protecting oneself, I think, is the critical way to go. With oneself meaning our body immunity. If we're going to get ourselves immune strength, we can face any virus, we can face any illness. We've got that immunity that's there for us. And then we have to trust our physicians and our researchers that they're going to find those vaccines that will help us protect ourselves. But the chances of being infected, by um, staying at a distance, 6 feet, keeping safe, is very low. You're protecting yourself. There don't need to be that severe anxiety now that, oh, I'm seeing somebody cross the 6 foot line. It's just actually 3 foot, 3 feet. That is important. 6 feet is very safe. So they cross that 3 feet line, and I'm going into a panic. I'm ready to throw objects at that person to keep them far from me. It's like these extreme behaviors need to be looked at, and people need to calm down.
Well, that is so good, Doc, because I think that what we have today versus all the other pandemics in the history of humanity is today we have social media. And so you
Yes,
have a lot of people giving a lot of opinions, and they're
that's
not
true.
qualified to do so.
Yeah,
And so it is so important for people to, as you said, trust the doctors, trust the experts
true.
that know what they're talking about. And that would be a key step in dealing
Absolutely.
with when we are facing dangerous situations. Make sure that the people we're listening to, they have the credentials to give an opinion.
Right.
Versus social media, you have all these individuals speaking and people have no clue what their credentials are. And the few that we do know their credentials, they're not even qualified. So it is good. Thank you very much. And thank you for correcting me if I said 2.1 million cases instead I might have said deaths. So maybe my mind was going
Oh,
ahead,
yeah, it's okay,
but
sir.
it's a significant amount
Yes,
of
yes.
people diagnosed and significant that are dying.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
we see the importance of getting advice from the qualified individuals. So
So,
we
so
thank
Mark,
you.
I want to add that, when we're talking about the resources to protect ourselves from fear, we got to look at those resources that are not necessarily only the vaccine, but the support systems that are there. We got the spiritual support systems that you are doing. We've got friendships that we look to each other, connectivity, caring, consideration for other people's feelings. These are lessons that we're seeing now that we got to be considerate. We need to stay home if we're not well, and whether we liked it or not, they're forcing people to stay home. So this is responsible behavior. Out of this crisis, we should have a new way of behavior. But those forces that are there, let's utilize them. Using them together will give us strength. And it's a togetherness I feel that we must move forward with. We will beat this virus together.
Thank you, Doc. And as you said, this will pass. Thank you so much. And we look forward to having another segment soon. Thank you. God bless you and stay safe.